This is our third Captain History presentation for the spring. We'll take the summer off because everybody wants outdoor things to do in the summer, so you don't want to be sitting inside here. So we'll resume in September. We'll have one in September, October, November. We haven't decided yet what the topics will be, but we'll decide that sometime early this summer. Just a couple of things to mention, and that is this Saturday, as a part of the Red Bud Days, some of you saw the flyers that were handed out. So we will be taking part in the Red Bud Days here, and we'll be hosting a pie and ice cream social right out here in the boulevard. And various times are noted in the shopping reminder, but we plan on being there ready to go at 10 in the morning and probably till about 2 in the afternoon or till we run out of pie. So join us then if you can. Also, we have an emailing list that some of you were probably on that for any of our events such as this, I will send out an email letting everybody know about it and with a poster attached. So I'm going to send this around. If you'd like to get on our mailing list, it doesn't hurt. You'll just get an email letting you know when we're having a presentation and what it's about. If you're already receiving those emails, there's no need to sign up tonight. So only if you are not on it and would like to receive the emails. So, other than that, we're also, the society's in the works of looking for a new museum. We have a possible location. We're working on that at this time, so hopefully we'll have news in the near future that we'll have a new museum. And we've been without a museum for a little over 2 years now. So tonight I'm just going to introduce the ladies, and then I'm going to hand it over to Pete Kalin, who's going to be the moderator. We have 3 graduates from County Normal. And I'll tell you what, before I do that, show of hands, any other graduates? I know we got some down here. Other ones that went to County Normal, so we got 6 others or so. So great, glad you're back. So tonight we have Mary Jones now. It was Mary Daly on this end, and a class of 56. Okay, and her sister Helen Gerke over here, and we had to separate them because, you know, sisters fight. So in fact, I'm going to sit down here between my sisters, so they all. So, and Helen was class of 57, along with Della Dart, I know, and Aggie as well. And you might see some familiar faces up on the screen tonight. So, and then in the middle we have Dorothy Lang. She was Dorothy Linke, and also class of 57. So the Statler brothers had a song about you. You know, the class of 57 had their dreams or whatever. So I don't know what you were dreaming about, but it was probably daydreaming during class. So anyway, I'll turn it over to Pete now, and he and the ladies will, and also Darlene Marks will put on the presentation.
Thank you, Randy. I had originally suggested this topic for a very important reason. This is very much a part of our history of Columbus. And it's one that, if we don't talk about it, it's going to get lost. You know, the building is no longer there. Most of the graduates are in their, what shall I say, elderly years. I know they used to have a very active alumni association, and I think that's ceased to exist, right? So it's very much a part of our history, and it's something that shouldn't be forgotten because it did play an important part. Basically, looking for information, there were 3 places. There was a 1915-1916 class history by Howard Rutherford. There was another history that was written in 75, and then in 1971, the school put out a history booklet with all of the graduates in it as a final wrapping up of the situation. I want to talk a little bit about education in this country. And that's the Country Normal School. Some of you notice the arbor. The arbor is still there. It's the only thing left. I think we have this, okay, the school ended up with a number of different names. Back when it was founded, it was a Columbia County Training School. And then about 20 years after that, it became the Columbia County Normal School. And then I believe sometime in the 50s, when you ladies were there, it was the Columbia County Teachers College. I read something that I think the laws changed in the 1950s, that they added the name college to attempt to give it a little more prestige. You know, if you were going to transfer credits from the normal school, it maybe sounded a little bit better that, yes, I went to the Teachers College. So that's kind of primarily why the name was changed. This picture is from either the 1920s or 1930s. This is something that I always had a problem with. Normal school. Now, if it was a normal school, where the other schools have normal schools,
Yeah.
it just doesn't make sense. Is why something a normal school?
I know why.
Who knows why?
Well, it's normal in French, and it's a prestigious school in France, and it lost something in the translation because we got called abnormals a lot.
Okay, so normal school was a school to train teachers in pedagogy and curriculum. Pedagogy. Thank you. I knew I was going to blow that. It's the later picture of the school. 3 stories. I believe it had a basement.
It was a beautiful building.
Very nice. Very, very nice building. This one's from the 20s. Columbia Training School, so that's very early on. Very nice school, very nice grounds, very impressive building. I think just about given the age of the people in the building, I think everybody knows where it was. We did put these slides in. It was on Selden Street between Hibbard and Charles. And that's the corner of Hibbard and Selden. And this is up a little bit of ways taken from Charles Street.
You can see the arbor there, right behind the flag on the left side. It's kind of, looks like a flag there, and the arbor's right behind it.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Flag is on it today.
There's the arbor. Okay, when researching this, I mentioned there were 3 sources. I was amazed that I looked up Fred Stairs' History of Columbus, not a single mention. And that really shocked me, because I said, well, I can find a lot of stuff there. And there really isn't anything. Talking about schools a little bit, as we know, Wisconsin became a state in 1848. We had 71 counties and a large county for the Menominee Indian tribe. This was written before they were Ho-Chunk. Set apart to given for their own. There being 71, or actually 72 counties in Wisconsin, an average of 21 townships, as our Columbia County has, there are then 1,491 townships with an average of 3 school districts, making a total of 4,473 schools that the school board must provide with teachers. Coming down to our own county, there was a need for 63 rural school teachers per year. And I think we also know that since the vast majority of them were women, and many of them got married and ceased to teach.
We weren't allowed to teach.
Weren't allowed to teach, yeah. That just amazes me. I'll digress here. Women were treated differently in education than men were. I know when I was first hired in Columbus Schools, the men got a head of family stipend, I think of about $400 or $500 a year. I think if a woman was single or widowed, she didn't get it. The other thing that totally amazed my daughter was my wife's teaching contract had a clause saying that if you became pregnant during the school year, you could be terminated. And they kind of decided, it almost sounds like there was something about, well, we don't want the kids to be looking up at a pregnant woman. So things have really changed. And I'm sure the days of county normal, it was much more restrictive. In our study in Wisconsin, we learned how hard it was to find country school teachers. Let us try and find the reason. We learned about the rapid increase in population in the small villages and almost unbelievable growth in former villages that became cities with population that numbered in the thousands. The tiny villages now had graded schools, and a teacher who had graduated from a normal school and had been prepared to teach in one grade. Such training would not qualify a person to teach in a county school where it would be required to teach all 8 grades. That method of preparing a person to be a teacher is excellent, but it seldom prepares him for more than 1 grade. And this is this guy, making some comments that are his opinion. A teacher having been taught in and prepared in a normal school would not wish to teach in one-room rural school, nor be prepared or qualified for such a position. He might think it would demean his position unless he attended a rural school himself, where he was a youngster and understood something about it. I don't really understand how it was more difficult to teach 1 grade in a city school compared to 8 grades, with kids anywhere from 6 to about 13, 14 years old.
Special ed as well.
Right.
Well, yeah, there was,
That happens, yeah.
you had special ed, we just didn't identify them.
No extra
Yeah,
help.
however it was defined then, but.
When you were teaching all 8 grades, you had 7 grades of helpers. Because my brothers and sisters used to help each other teach their brothers and sisters when they were different grades.
But what I don't understand is if there's 2 or 3 first graders and you're teaching 8th graders, what's going on at the same time? But I understand what you're saying is that's the only way it would work.
Sure. And they did it,
And it worked,
yeah.
and they got great educations.
Right. Where I got confused is when I see normal schools, they list Whitewater, Stevens Point, Platteville, Milwaukee,
Affiliator.
Oshkosh. What?
Affiliator schools where I went. That's country school, yeah.
Okay.
I know where that is.
So those were also called normal schools. So sometimes there's sometimes people don't see the difference between the country school and or the normal school and the training school. That they were very different. One was a 4-year program. The normal schools became teachers' colleges, which became state colleges, which became the state university system. So other than Madison, and I think the exception of Stout, all of these other schools are presently the university schools that we're familiar with. Kind of an analogy, I think the county teachers' colleges were about like the 2-year schools in the UW system. The only big difference is they were strictly to teach teachers. You weren't majoring in or this or that or everything else under the sun. The teachers' college existed in Columbus from 1908 to 1971. And a little bit of the background. The long and illustrious career of the Teachers College began one day in November of 1907 when the Columbia County Board of Supervisors voted to open such a training school. Its purpose were definitely outlined and in their own way differed from those of four-year institutions of higher learning. Basically, the school was to train young people to become teachers in the common schools, particularly those in rural areas where children were often deprived because of distances, transportation problems, as well as insufficiently prepared teachers to receive an adequate elementary education. To this end, all of the 8 administrators of the school during its 63-year history have devoted their talents. So in 1907, the county board agreed to set up a school. First question is, where are you going to put it? And you got to believe that was a political issue. If you know anything about county boards, if you know anything about who gets the facility and who doesn't get the facility. So they set up a committee of 3 people, 3 supervisors. And they went throughout the county looking for potential sites. They reported back to the County Board of Supervisors that they had made a decision. They had narrowed it down to Portage, Wyacina, and Columbus. The Board of Supervisors were then required to vote, and I think someplace I saw the vote was, like 4 to 3 to 1. Well, that wouldn't be, there would be more supervisors. Very close vote. Kind of hard to understand how Portage didn't get it, because they were the biggest, they had the most supervisors. Everything was in Portage. The courthouse was in Portage, the jail was in Portage, and everything else was in Portage. And somehow it landed in Columbus. There was a committee of 3 people then that were given the task of hiring a faculty. The one representative was from Columbus, one was from Lodi, and the other one was from Portage. And from some of the things I read, they suggested that the gentleman from Lodi probably was most influential of any of them in getting it in Columbus. So it was a political issue. Okay, you decide where you're going to put it. The next question, or you decided which city you're going to put it in. The next question is, where are you going to put it in the community? And so they started scouting around. They found that former Governor Lewis had given a plot of land where the where the county normal was, gave a piece of land to the city for park purposes. And the city then turned around and gave it to the county, I think for $1, to be the site of the normal school. They then went about making plans for building, curriculum, staffing, all those types of things then took place. The other question they had was who's in charge of the school, who's going to, administer it. And so the first training school board was H.E. Andrews, who was from, I believe he was from Portage, S.C. Cushman, and a name that you should recognize, A.M. Belloc, who was the men's clothing store owner at the time. So these 3 served as a school board for many, many years. There were others from the area. I guess in the 63 years, there were only 3 treasurers, one of who was, I'm going to say Joe Roach. I don't know if it was Joe Roach or John Roach. I think I think it was John. You then had to hire a faculty. S.M. Thomas was the principal of Lodi High School. Now remember in 1907, the high schools in the cities were just beginning to be formed. I think our first graduates at Columbus High School were 2 women in 1896. So it's not that many years that you've had high schools. Thomas was the principal, and assistant was Clara Clark. The information, written information is that he received a salary of $1,500 a year, and of course Ms. Clark earned $1,000. Now, she was the assistant, but you know, he was the principal, but yet they're probably following that pattern. By 1911, they had increased the faculty from 2 to 4 members.
So they taught every class? These 2 guys taught every class?
Yes, well, the class, yes.
Do you have any information how many students were there in 1911?
Yes. Just saw that. Okay, in 1909 there were 4 graduates. By 1910 there were 22 graduates. And in one place here, it's during the early years, the student body was nearly 100% women. Men did not elect to go into elementary education. And the 1 or 2 boys kind of clung together in a close relationship. However, in 1932, there were 5 boys who immediately organized themselves into a basketball team. It was entirely possible that many school children then went through all 12 grades with ever contacting a man teacher. And I think that's very much true. In 1937, the school changed from a 1-year program to a 2-year program. In terms of financing the school, or one of the things that the school did is Columbia County students did not pay any tuition in the early days, nor could any student be graduated under 17 years of age. Texts were furnished by the school at a rental fee of 25 cents per student, collected monthly in advance. A unique feature of the week's schedule was school on Saturdays, none on Mondays. This provided an opportunity for students to visit rural schools on Monday to observe, as well as for rural teachers to observe, as well as for rural teachers the model training school on campus on Saturday. This program began in 1911, proved to be advantageous. I'm going to talk about curriculum. I should know that term as a former teacher. Curriculum consisted, and one of the things I have to say is when I identify the course of studies, one has to realize this institution went on for 63 years. So what they did in 1915 may well not be what they did in 1955 or the 1930s. So we'll ask these women what they remember of the curriculum. Usual courses of study: reading, arithmetic, algebra, English composition and grammar, geography, dictionary work, and U.S. history. 15 minutes daily were devoted to music, and there were also classes in book mending, library reading, and cataloging. Another required course, and I'm not going to even try to pronounce it, must have been frightening for those who registered for it till they discovered it only meant the mastery of correct pronunciation. So now you know why I didn't identify the term. maybe I'll go through some of these pictures and go back. This is can any of you identify, I guess it's one of the classrooms for the teachers,
It was a study hall.
study hall? Probably about mid-50s, would you say?
Right.
It was there in the 60s, and we had about 22 people, and we each had our own desk and all our books, and that was where we were stationed, and we're on the 3rd floor.
So it got very hot.
Yeah.
The air conditioning didn't work? Okay, this picture is a little bit harder to see. It's identified as the library table in corner of the main room. Can somebody give me a sense of what the building looked like? My understanding is the basement had kind of a smallish gym,
Very small.
small gym.
Yep.
What else in the basement?
Lunchroom.
Lunchroom, first floor,
Rooms, classrooms.
kind of regular sized classrooms. Third floor,
Well, 2nd floor were more classrooms. 3rd floor was, I believe, 2 classrooms, and then the big room, and that was where we all were.
okay.
So was there a library?
Pardon?
Was there a library?
Yes, and also a big, baby grand piano in the corner, and a fire escape that we all used once a month. And it went from the 3rd floor all the way down to the bottom, and it went super fast.
The gym down below was so small that you only had like a foot outside the basketball floor that was there, but it wasn't very big. You know, and that's where you had basketball practice. I know when I went there as a junior high, because they were building Dickinson at that time, we played all away games that year because we couldn't hold any games there. It was just way too small.
I know the Teachers College used Dickinson Gym for basketball games. They did have a basketball team in like 68, 69, somewhere around there. Opening exercises. One of the things is that as part of the course of studies, there was a number of grade school age kids that were at the school, and you got to practice on them. In looking at some of the accounts, some people suggested that at least some of the kids that went there were there because they were rather naughty and didn't get along. Now, I don't know if it's true or not, but it was something that you weren't welcome in the public school, so your parents sent you to the training school. Is that right? I'm not sure to what extent how accurate that is. On the other hand, I think there were some who saw that there were professors that knew what they were doing, because one of the early lists of pupils has a poser and has a Belloc, and and these are parents that weren't going to shuffle their kids off to a school that they didn't have confidence in. This is labeled practice class in handwork. I don't know if this is crocheting or what it is, but it's one of the few pictures of the students and the interior of the building. And the Columbia County Normal School 1934 basketball team. I did read that there was also a women's volleyball team, but I don't think they played nearly as many games. And there was kind of a league of the Wisconsin teacher colleges who would play each other, and so there you were kind of in a league of sorts. Members of the school 1908, 1909. Now I'm sure we all recognize these people. As I count, with in addition to the principal who's front and center. I see 2 males. And that was common. I would say when you were in school, what would you say number of male students to women? 5, 6. Okay, yeah, here's that list of model school students: Richard Belloc, Edward Poser. Those are the only 2 names I recognize. Someplace in these notes there's the curriculum. I'm not finding it. Curriculum in 1934 was first quarter, elementary education 1, reading methods, language methods, arithmetic methods, agricultural methods, 5 weeks of practice teaching, and 5 weeks of spelling. Second quarter, practice teaching, reading methods, language methods, arithmetic methods, domestic science, rural economics. Third quarter, practice teaching, geography methods, drawing and construction, library methods, elementary ed 2, history methods. Fourth quarter, practice teaching, geography methods, civics methods, agriculture methods, physiology. Music, penmanship, plays, games, physical education throughout the year. That was the curriculum in the 30s. I noticed the 1-year curriculum from the earlier time period there. It looked like you didn't practice teach in the 4th quarter. One of the things I have to say about the school, and this is with my experience in education, you weren't there very long where you were involved with students, correct?
Yep.
I mean, within the first couple of weeks. 3 weeks. You've listened to me. Why don't we start asking these ladies some questions?
One other thing, the first class, because the school was being built, so the first class was held in the First Methodist Church across from the post office. And then when they graduated, the first class and the second class, and I'm sure many classes after that, they were graduated in the City Hall, in the auditorium. And for how long that went on, I have no idea, but that is what we found too.
Could any of you comment as to when you first were in front of students and what that felt like?
I think maybe 3 or 4 weeks, not longer than 6 weeks of practicing. But I've also wondered, how did they choose the children that we should practice on? Was it just random, or was it those that need extra help? I mean, how was that decided who we practiced on? I was hoping-
My answer is, I think as parents, you decided to send your kid to the public school, the parochial school, or send them to the training school. So I think it's, as a parent, you came forward and you said, you know, I'd like my kid to attend this particular school.
I don't know, I went out to the Nelson School, that's out on County Highway 8, out in town of Hamden. And I believe it was 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, they moved us into Columbus. I think it might have been because it was getting too many students or something. I don't really know, all I knew was to get on the bus and
we went.
So did you go to the normal school then?
Yes. Well, whatever it's called at the time, junior college.
Well, remember when Dickinson School was built, they used the training school as, I don't know if it was middle school or grade school,
It was 7th and 8th graders.
7th and 8th graders.
I went to 7th grade there because they were building Dickinson at that time. So the 7th and 8th graders went there. We had like the first floor, the second floor, whatever you want to call it. That was our 7th and 8th graders at junior high at that point.
My gosh, you're that old, Larry?
Yep.
That was our situation too. They built the new Hamden School shortly after we went to Columbus.
And my understanding is they built a Hamden School because they didn't want to lose the school. They wanted a school in the country, so
Yeah.
Hamden built the school and then they consolidated with Columbus. So once you had the building there, well, you're gonna have to use it. That was my understanding of
There
it.
was a Sharpie School and a Nelson School and a Hamden School. And I don't know, there used to be a Sutton School. I don't know if that was in them.
Yeah, and I know the Hamden School was 4 classrooms, a gym, a lunchroom, which we turned into a library. Question?
Once they built Dickinson, the way Dickinson is now, then Hamden, I know because all those kids came to 8th grade with me when we were moved in that first year from Hamden. And from like the whole Bristol or Hamden area.
Yeah, I think for a while it was grade 1, 2 together, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And then I know when my kids were small, all of a sudden, somebody got the bright idea to send all the 3rd and 4th graders out there. And so they were, which they loved, you know. No administration, nobody looking in on you. You could do your thing, and a huge playground for the number of kids. A very nice gym. The kids that were in Hamden loved it. Well, we have all of these people here who know far much more about County Normal than I do. Question or comment?
Well, have them talk about where they lived, so those that came from out of the area that weren't from Columbus, where those ladies or gentlemen lived, how they got back and forth at that time.
Well, I only lived 5 miles out of town, but I did stay in town. I stayed in Sheila's house. Yes. Janice Hendricks and we each had a bedroom at your house, and I think it was $5 a week.
So were there homes in town that would continually rent out rooms to students then?
Yeah, yes. Della and Aggie stayed in town here.
Lucy Weber and somebody.
Our Aunt Margaret rented out rooms in her home on School Street, or Prairie Street.
I think a lot of people rented out rooms. I know the house that we had on Harrison Street, high school teacher, Zay Priester, rented a room there, and I think there were others, and that was, excuse me, that was very common.
No, I didn't stay in town. It would have been nice, but I lived 6 miles out and my parents didn't think that was a good idea. There was no need.
That was I had a job, so I had to stay in town. And there wasn't a car for me, so when I did practice teaching, my grandpa gave me his 47 Hudson to use to drive to the Sutton School and the Hamden School, or Nelson School.
A nice car.
Yeah. It was a big thing.
Yeah.
Haven't you got something to say?
No.
Helen and I rode together every morning. I went as a senior, so I was only there 1 year, but we rode together. And then we never saw each other again, really, during the day, because we were in different years. But we did have the car. My mother didn't have a car for the daytime, but we did. So, but when my parents, or when there's a picture on the table, my mother and her 5 sisters all graduated from Columbia County Teachers College, or County Normal at the time. And they all went, I'll tell you just a little bit of story. My grandmother had to quit school in her middle of her freshman year in high school. And she determined that her children would have an education. And so she had these 6 daughters, and Grandma, meanwhile, had become a milliner and a seamstress. So she had her 6 lovely daughters at church in these homemade lovely gowns, and some woman came along and said, "Oh, Agnes, what a lovely bunch of hired girls we're going to have." And my grandmother said, "None of my daughters will ever be hired girls," and they weren't. And she moved heaven and hell and high water to get those girls educated, and then all 6 of them went taught, and one did it for a career. She ended up teaching in an American school in Syria right before World War II broke out, and she had signed her contract for the 2nd year. They were transported through the desert up to the ship, put on the ship, blacked out, and it zigzagged all the way back to New York. And my grandma had no idea where Cece was or if she had ever come back. So it turned into quite an experience for her, and led to she taught at a very exclusive school in Chicago then the rest of her life. But her career went from a farm in Columbus milking cows to Syria and international American school experience, which was they had a lot of privileges as that. So.
Mary taught at County Normal.
Oh, and Aunt Mary, the oldest, was extremely talented, and she taught at County Normal. She taught her sisters. My mother and her sister Florence graduated the same year, and so there were a lot of them in school at County Normal at the same time. And so it's kind of a family history. And on my father's side, our Auntie Vi also went to County Normal. I have a picture back there of them in their school. My father, his 3 brothers, and his sister Viola. And she was the youngest daughter. And my grandfather had been forced to quit grade school at the church school out in St. Columkill, that little Austin school. And so, now I forgot what I was going to say. Oh, he had to quit school to work on the farm in 6th grade, and he vowed that his children would get an education. So many years later, my father, Joe Daly, graduated, and his father, Joe Daly, the elder, was the treasurer of the school board then, and he signed the certificate. I had it for a while. It was a great big certificate, because that was their main achievement. If they got through 8th grade, they had made it. And so Auntie Vi then went on, and she started teaching at the Danville School. And if you know where the road TT and T come together, there's a big hill with a house on it. Well, that used to be a 2-room frame school. And you can still see the concrete stairs and the pipe railings down there. And she taught in one of the rooms, and Joe Conlon's mother taught in the other one. And I can't remember her first name now, but and then she taught
Miriam Conlon.
Marion Conlon, yes. And so then Auntie Vi taught all her life, and she never married, and it was kind of, and then my father's family, 4 of the 5 daughters all became teachers. So we go back, not only our generation and your generation, but beyond to the one before that, and we've got some nice memorabilia on the table there that, it's really precious to us. So we're very grateful for what an important part it played in all of our lives. We wouldn't be where we are without it, so.
I had a question. So you all lived much more locally, but were any of your classmates coming in on the train and then having to get over to the college? Like, was there an omnibus or anything? Or like, did they have cars set up to come and pick up people from the train?
I don't know.
In the written material, and this is the very, very early years, if home was too far away to make a daily round trip on foot, some students drove in a horse and buggy or a cutter in the winter, on horseback or by bicycles. This calls for hitching old Dobbin to a hitching post or leaving him in a stable or barn in town someplace. The well-known McQueenie train on the CM in St. Paul passed through Columbus every morning en route from Portage to Milwaukee and returned every evening. Now, I've seen reports of, I don't know if this is true of people attending the normal school, but I have read accounts of people in Rio getting on the train in the morning, going to high school, and then catching the evening train back to Rio. So,
And I've also read that during the days of McQueenie's train, he took it upon himself to know who the kids were that were coming to school every day, riding on his train. He made sure that if somebody was missing, he asked, where's so-and-so today? And he took it upon himself to take care of those kids who would go into the normal school.
if you're not familiar with McQueenie's train, Susan Stair has a painting of it in City Hall.
Okay. The story that I heard about him was that one day he asked the students that were coming to Columbus if they mind that he not stopping in Columbus and spending and going down to Milwaukee. So.
Go ahead.
First, a comment, aren't a lot of the yearbooks at Partyville? I mean, do we have a collection of the Columbia County's Teachers College? I believe in Partyville at their Historical Society, they have a whole bunch of things. My second one is a question, and that's, did you bother with a mascot? You know, hawks or eagles or, no? You didn't bother in those days. Okay, and number three, then the third question is, was there a variety of openings at this school, that school? How did you, once you graduated from your 1 or 2 year course, how did you get assigned, or did you apply? Or you get, you know, just curious.
Let's take that one.
Get a job,
I can tell a story.
Sure.
When I graduated, I went out, I did some practice teaching in Marshall before I graduated. And then I also did some practice teaching out at, is it at Siegel? There was a school out there. And when I got all towards the end of April, Milt Patchett and Reuben Dam, I'm sure you all know him,
Yep.
came up to the school and said, "Where is Mary Lynn?" And I had an interview with them, and I got hired before I graduated.
What school did you go to?
Fuller Street,
Fuller Street.
yeah. Grade 2.
Which schools did all these ladies teach at?
I only taught 1 year in the school that I taught at with my husband-to-be. My new family, it turned out, was on the school board. So, of course, I taught in that school in Stoughton, and I had an apartment there. And then I taught there that year, and then I was engaged, but then my to-be husband, Uncle Sam, decided he wanted them then, right then and not there. So we were scheduled to get married on February 10th. And Uncle Sam, on the 8th, Uncle Sam wanted him on the 10th. So the invitations were ready to go out. So on the envelope, change of date, we changed it to the 1st of February, the coldest, the awfulest, the worst day in the world. And so on the 1st of February, we were married, and then we went to Stoughton for that 2 or 3 day honeymoon, and then he went out for training, that first training you get. And so I finished at Stoughton, and then I was not going to sign another year because I had to go to Germany. And so I finished it, and it just happened that that was the next year when St. Jerome's opened their new school. So then for that first semester, I was Mrs. Gerke, I taught the first semester, and then Mrs. Erke took the second semester. So they went from Gerke to Erke. And she lived out there in Danville. She was the photographer, and so she taught there. And then he got drafted, went to basic training, got sent to Germany. So then I had to, of course, when he went by boat, so it took 2 weeks to get there. And so then I waited, and then before Christmas that year, he was in Hanau, and so I dressed all up, and I went to Germany. So I took my first train ride, and girdle, heels, coat, gloves, hat, the whole schmo. So I take the train to New York, and then first the train to Milwaukee, stayed with my aunt overnight. She took me to the plane. I flew to New York. I'm 21 years old, all dolled up and beautiful. And so I flew, these were first things I had ever done, that. And so then I thought, it landed, and there I was in Germany. And I thought, nobody will speak English, it's just going to be awful. So my husband met me, and I did find out that there were a lot of Americans there because the bases were there, so he had found us an apartment, and so we didn't have, I don't know how we got there because we didn't have a car, but anyway, we lived right with the Germans, the regular people. So he found this apartment that was horrid, but it was a place. So then he got sent out to go on 2 weeks of training. So my friends and I, we had a women's group, and so we found myself a better apartment, and I went to his bicycle and put a note on it and said, "This is where we live now." So when he came home, he pedaled his bike to the much better place. Oh yes, at that time, Elvis Presley was in the same unit, but not but yes, Elvis Presley, and he did see him, and so.
I think he was already married.
Yeah. Did you teach there as well?
Oh, I did, because thank you. I did, after I did get there, then I took the train to where didn't I tell him that? When I went over to where the military children were, and so then I went and I did subbing and things there for that while I was there. So, and then when I did come back, then I did subbing. Then my family came.
Did you see Elvis?
No, I didn't, but my husband did in his, yeah.
He said it was very nice.
Yeah. Yeah, he was just a regular one, he was in the army, that was, but he did the singing and things, but.
You talked about Partyville having the historical society there.
Correct.
I'm the secretary for the Columbia County Alumni Association. We are disbanding. And all the information we have, everything will be going up there. So they will have all the records of the county college.
Oh,
That's very nice.
Well, that'd be good.
Okay, my husband and I, we went out to see Dorothy Hasey, who's in her 90s and confined at home pretty much. And we sat down a couple days with her for several hours. and I will just share some of the things that she had to say.
Darlene?
Okay. So Dorothy, she went to County Normal for 2 years, and after the first 6 weeks, she said, then she started teaching in the demonstration school, as they called it, she said. You taught all 8 grades. You were assigned to a grade for 6 weeks at a time. Eventually, you will teach all grades, is how she said. After graduating, she taught all grades, 8 grades, in a one-room country school near Poynette called the Jacob Rue School, and she taught there for 2 years. Then she went to Arlington and taught 2nd and 3rd grades. She said sometimes, and she called them, like, I heard the children not behaving or they were kind of naughty, and she kind of said, yeah, I guess I'd call some of them a little naughty sometimes. Let me see. At the time she said she was there, Dorothy Swarthout was the principal and a teacher. Edgar Whipperman went from principal at the high school and became principal at the County Normal School. Each country school had a board of 3 or 4 people. The Arlington wage was $125 a month. She said cost to go to school, she remembers, like $20–25 question mark a year. The county told you what to teach, math, reading, writing, and so forth. Also, someone from the county or school board visited 2 or 3 times a year, I'm assuming, checking on them. The bathroom was outside, the outhouse. Time for school was 9 to 4 p.m. School started in September, went till May. She said to teach, you need to like children and also be a disciplinarian, if I pronounced that correctly. After 2 years of normal school, then you could go on for more education at Teachers College, and you also needed to have a license to teach. Now, I've read in 2 different places. When you graduate from County Normal, then you got a license, and it was for 2 years, and then I've read somewhere else it was like for 3 years, so I'm not sure what it was. And then she mentioned other people's names who went to the County Normal School. One of her very close friends, Virginia Neoff, if anyone knew who she is. In fact, she was even in her wedding. She lives right now in the Randolph Nursing Home. And then she mentioned Helen and Dorothy, Della, Augie, or Angie, Aggie, sorry about that, Juanita, and Marvin Harold, and a couple men, but not very many men. Okay.
What was the question?
Where did you teach?
Oh. I taught, it's called Gibson Corners area, but it was actually Reeseville, Lowell, Reeseville area. It's no longer there. And I taught there for 2 years. I had 29 kids, every grade. And having heard my father talking about his hijinks tipping over toilets in the country, which apparently they did at Halloween, I got to go to the bathroom, the outhouse, once a day, and I often thought when I was in there, you know, if they all got together, they could tip me over in this. They never did. But that was where I started out, and I don't know how I got the job. I think somebody called and asked if they could interview, so one night after my dad finished milking and they finished their milking, they all came over and sat down at our kitchen table with my mother and father and me, and I had a job. So,
Tell them about the bird.
oh, the bird?
The windshield.
Oh. Well, I was driving to school the first year, and there was a semi coming on 16. It was a busy road, and the school was right up next to the road. And I was driving along and looking at the semi, and all of a sudden, clunk, cold air. I had a pheasant wrapped around my neck, and there was broken glass everywhere, in my teeth, everywhere. And I knocked it on the floor, and then I got to school and got out, and when the kids got there, Wayne Schultz, an 8th grader, said to me, okay, 2 days recess or we turn you into the game warden. So anyway, but that was another thing. And then I was brushing, I had a black wool skirt and a black wool sweater on, of course, and then I was shaking off feathers and glass all day long. And so then I had to call Ronnie Duro to come and get the car and me, and he fixed me up as he always did. But anyway, and then after that, where did I go? I went to Waukesha, or near Waukesha, taught at Genesee in a 4-room school. So I was moving up. And then I went back to, that when I went back to Oshkosh and got my degree. And then I taught in Hales Corners for a year, and then my husband got a graduate program in Tallahassee, so I taught in Tallahassee for a year, and I in a Catholic school with 2 grades, 39 kids, and no facilities. Their idea of a gym was the piney woods and the red sand, and when they would come in, they would be just red and white stripes. They were just, it was quite an experience, it really was. They had 900 kids from kindergarten through high school, and the janitor was also the bus driver. So it was an experience. Then I came back and landed in Port Washington, where I stayed for 30 years. So I had 38 years altogether in quite a variety of situations.
Okay, when I got approached by Bill Payton, that was the English teacher here in Columbus when I was in high school, and he offered me a job in Oostburg. He said they're building a new grade school, and he offered Janice Hendricks a job there too. We were both going to go up to Oostburg. Well, she backed out, but I went to Oostburg, and the new school wasn't done. So I was in the country with 4 grades in a country school, and it had mice. But I had a little 4th grade boy that just loved to empty mouse traps. So they cleared them out pretty quick. And then I got married, and my husband was still going to school in Whitewater, so we moved to Whitewater. But winters we lived in Fontana, and on the lake, and I taught 2nd grade in Fontana for 2 years. And then every summer we'd move back to Whitewater. We had furnished apartments, so we just moved back and forth. And then he finally graduated, and he went to Iowa Grant. And we ended up living in Cobb, and I taught in Montfort for 1 year, 4th grade. And then kids started coming, and that was the end for my teaching.
When did Phil move to, when did you move to Columbus?
From Iowa Grant, we went to Seymour for 5 years, and we came back to Columbus in '66.
In reading some of this literature, I'm reading that they were very strict as to what you could do and what you couldn't do as far as alcohol, spending some time with gentlemen. Could any of you mention what the expectations were?
I had a friend, they found out she was pregnant, and she was teaching, and it was, toward the end of the year even, and they found out she was pregnant. She wasn't showing it or anything, but she was done right then.
Wow. Was she married?
Yeah, she was married. It was all legal.
Well, I had an experience with two of these situations where in Port Washington, we had a gym teacher, a woman, and her husband was in the seminary becoming a minister. And she was getting paid $500 less than the men were because they were head of the family. Well, so we had a meeting. She said, I am the head of the family. And so there was a big fight, and the school board met, and there was a lot of yelling and hollering. But they finally did change that there. And then regarding the pregnancy thing, there was a young girl, and she and her husband were both just out of college. This was also in Port Washington. And she got pregnant during the school year, and she wouldn't admit it. So she was obviously getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and they called her into the office and had a big row, I guess. But anyway, she did have to quit teaching. But then after that, the rule was changed. So, but I mean, she was married and she was the breadwinner. So it was. I'm glad all those things have been improved.
From the written record, in the early days, rules of dress and behavior were deeply impressed upon the students. Teaching contracts listed do's and don'ts, and failure to comply meant dismissal. Teachers should wear dresses or shirt waists with a high neck, sleeves to the elbow or longer, and skirts below the top of their high-button shoes. A young lady could not walk out publicly with a young man, only with her father or brother. Should she engage in unseemly conduct or marry, this was cause for instant dismissal. Tobogganing was out of the question as an unbecoming recreation. Back in 1912, even girls dancing together at the rooming house during noon hour was reason enough to be called to the office the next morning for a firm but friendly reprimand from S.M. Thomas, the principal. Men teachers were forbidden in local pubs, nor could they indulge in spirits or tobacco, either for chewing or smoking. Nor could they squire single women to public places. One wonders, when romances did blossom in those days, though it is understandable why many women teachers never married. I think he's being a little overcritical there.
That calls to mind, a good friend of mine was married and had 5 children, taught math at the high school in Port, and when we moved there in the 60s, he did not go into a bar. He would go to the back door and they would give him some beer or something, but he did not want to be seen in a bar. And then as to the dress code, this was when did pantsuits come in? Was that the 80s? 70s. Well, so one day we were in the lounge and we had some fashionable people who wanted to wear pantsuits. And so somebody said, Mary, do something. So I called the principal and I said, Joe, we want to wear pantsuits to school. And he said, oh, no, you can't do that. You can't do that. And I said, well, I think I'll call, I don't know what the name was, the superintendent. So I called him, I think he said, call the superintendent. And I called him, and he said, oh, for heaven's sakes, why are you asking me that? Wear what you want to wear. So we all wore pantsuits. I've been to some schools recently, though, and I do think maybe some dress codes should be discussed.
Other questions?
When did the requirements change from being able to teach with a 2-year certificate to more of a 4-year education?
I think it kind of depended on the school system. I know when I started teaching in '68, there were 2 or 3 women that did not have bachelor's degrees. I think they had 3 years and loads of teaching experience. Of course, they paid them less, I would think, I would think the two-year degree was okay for country schools. I think the requirements for graded schools, city schools, village schools, was 3 years or, you know, a bachelor's degree.
When it transitioned from the country schools to the city schools, our mother was a one-year county normal graduate, and she was given a license by the state, but had to continue her education every summer and fulfill additional credits moving toward matriculation or whatever, but she was able to maintain her license, and she taught for many years in third grade.
I think many of the women did that, started with the two-year program, and then, you know, if you were gonna make it a career financially, it made more sense for you to go back to school and get the degree.
What year were teachers allowed to start teaching when they were, able to keep teaching when they showed that they were pregnant?
I'm gonna say, maybe mid-70s, late 60s. My wife had contracts in 66 and 67, and that had the clause in it that if you were pregnant, you could be basically fired. 66, 67, yeah. I think it changed probably in the early 70s. I know Ivan Tisa's wife had to quit. John Titus's wife had to quit because they were pregnant. You could get hired back, but you lost any sick leave, you lost any benefits. You were terminated, and then if they wanted you back, they might hire you back. But there was no...
That was a sneaky way of dismissing teachers that you didn't really want.
Yeah.
Was it an actual firing, or was it more you went on leave if you became?
No, you did go on leave. You were terminated. You were definitely terminated.
And your husband, of course,
Oh, no. One of the things I have to say about the county schools, and this is my experience as a teacher, you know, they said 3 weeks in, they're in front of students. I'm a junior in college. That's my first education course. The first time I was in front of a kid was I was an intern practice teacher after I had finished my degree other than practice teaching. One wonderful thing that they did is they got those people in there right from the very start. I would guess you did observation of regular teachers. There was observation, there was small groups, there was demonstration school. I mean, they really got these people into what they were going to do right away.
And you soon found out that if that was the career for you, if that was it. Now I think you get your degree, then you start teaching and you find out, oh, I don't really like this.
My granddaughter is going to Green Bay to be a teacher. And because there was such a shortage of teachers in Green Bay this 2 years ago already, they had those kids the first year that they were, their very first semester, they were sending them out into classrooms as aides. Because one reason, they were short of teachers, and the second reason, they said, if you don't want to be a teacher, you're going to find out right now.
Yeah, I would have found out after 4 years of education that, oh, gee, I don't know if I really like this. And I know I have a grandson going to Stevens Point, and he took educational psychology courses, a second semester freshman. They're getting, it's wonderful that they're getting them out with the kids earlier for them to figure out, yeah, this is for me, or no, it's not.
I was just going to mention that we found out that the Columbia County Teachers College had their 50th anniversary, June 8th, 1958. And in that booklet, dedication, it would seem fitting that we, the students of Columbia County Teachers College, dedicate this 50th anniversary issue to the many people and groups of people who have made our school a respected institution throughout the state. We are thinking of the graduates, the faculty, and the school board. Separately, these groups are helpless, but molded together, they make an efficient machine producing what we are told is the best product for rural education in Wisconsin.
Class of 56, Wayne Bubbles.
Oh my gosh.
And I understand there's a Dorothy Linky in this picture.
Helen must be there too.
Top row, Dorothy Linky.
I must be, I'm in that picture too. Helen used to see my name, so yours must be there.
You're the third from the right.
Agnes Teeter.
From bottom row. That's you.
I'm in the first row.
And your name's there, Helen?
Oh, you have to be behind me.
I'm in the middle row.
Oh my gosh.
I'll leave this up here, and once we're done, if you want to step up where you can see it. I think this is, I don't know if I have one more, I'll come back to this. Okay, that's the history, and I'm not going to read through it. I think that's the end. Well, I think we accomplished what I wanted to accomplish. You know, isn't it amazing that none of these women would get up here and say, well, I'll present this program. Yet they have all kinds of wonderful recollections, and we very much appreciate. And a thank you to all of you graduates.
I also want to mention, in the booklet that we acquired, we have a list of all the graduates in which year, from 1909 to 1958. So I have that, I'll put it on the table so anybody wants to look at the year.
Let me just,
Yeah, I'm just gonna wrap up.
yeah. Two names I was going to mention, Roland Sockwell, anybody remember him? He taught at County Normal, and I didn't realize, but Wilma Black taught art the last 3 years. Yeah.
All right, thank you, Peter, and ladies for participating. Is there any of the other graduates that would like to comment on anything before we wrap up here?
I'd like to say when I got my first teaching job.
Just a second, Aggie.
When I got my first teaching job, it was out at Sutton's, in that area where they lived, the Suttons. I had 8 kids.
So that was out on A, near Highway 60 or
Where the
something?
Sutton family lived in that, and there was West.
Sanderson and A.
Sheridan. Okay, yeah.
Not there anymore.
8
so.
kids.
8 kids.
All Suttons?
Well, no, no.
Because they had a big family.
Yeah, I know they did, and there was Durr kids, Steers kid. Steers. Yeah, but you know what? That was such a wonderful experience for me to start out with. I did have one little girl that in today's schooling, she would have been in a special class. So I got shoes thrown at me just about every day, so, but she was sweet.
Did you
So were they your size or not?
No, but I was good at ducking because they were smaller, so.
Did you have one in each grade if you had 8 kids, or did you luck out?
No, I didn't have all grades, no.
Any other graduates that'd like to? Della, you got anything?
What did I teach? Where was your first teaching job?
I have to think where I started out. I don't even remember. I taught in Kaiser for a semester. And I taught it, my practice teaching was supposed to be in Englewood. And before the time came for me to start, the teacher had a stroke. And so I went out a week early and stayed a week after. So I was actually out there for 4 weeks, whatever. And from there, I think I went to Marshall.
What year?
I taught there for a couple of years, and I came to Columbus for 2 years, and I went back to Marshall for another 30. So, teaching was good for me, good to me, and
Yeah, thank you so much for that.
lots of interesting experiences. Yeah.
Did you hand it to Noreen? Noreen?
Right next, yeah. Teacher.
What's that?
No, not in the public school. I mean, not in the. You were teaching for your second year of college. I was substituted for a semester in the second year of college.
Anyway, you graduated from County Normal, right?
No.
Oh, no, you didn't. Oh, I'm
Never
sorry.
went
Okay.
there. No.
Okay, sorry.
I went to a country grade school for 8 years. All 6 of us did.
And I did too. Mary and I did too for 8 years.
Juanita?
And then in November every year,
It's still there.
the 1st of November, my dad hurried up to the school, checks the outhouses, be sure they were sitting up.
Yeah, that's a common practice.
Yeah.
Juanita?
Yeah, I'm up there in the class of 57. And my first school was out off Highway 22, and I had 36 kids in all 8 grades.
Oh, my God.
But I had indoor plumbing. And my second year there, I had 34 kids, because 6 graduated and only 4 first graders came in. So I was down to 34. That was heaven.
Was that the minutes for?
Lovell Center is now the
She graduated with us.
just off Highway 28.
She went that time. Originally.
No? Okay.
She's up there.
You're speechless?
Yeah,
Okay,
is that okay?
sure. Just a couple other things. One is, I want to thank Sue Walcott and Beth Allschwager and John and Darlene for supplying pictures and information for this presentation. I don't know if I missed anybody else. If so, I'm sorry.
Mary brought a lot of pictures and information.
Yep, okay, Mary did too, yeah. So I wanted to mention over there, we got a couple of tables with memorabilia over there, so take a look at that on your way out. And we'd like to get a picture of all the graduates that are here together, one group photo, so don't go away until we get that done, so.
I think if you're looking for other pictures of classes, Beth has a scrapbook that I borrowed that has most of the classes in it. And Beth probably should have been the person up here talking about this rather than myself. So she has lots of information.
Would it be possible, like if Columbia County Historical Society is getting it, would it be possible for our historical society to have copies so that, you know, there's some for in town? So that the history is accessible too, maybe? As the donations are being made from the Alumni Association?
What do you think, Beth?
Oh, we don't have a place for it.
Well, but if you don't take it when it's there, you don't get it. I think that's something that should be worked on. My experience with the County Historical Society is, I don't know if it's ever open.
In the summer.
In the summer?
Yeah.
But very limited hours.
Yes.
Partyville, Columbia County Historical Society on the main street. I think it's a former hotel.
Just one other thing, if anybody would like to join our historical society, please let us know. We're always looking for new members, so otherwise, thank you all for coming.